Hello, everyone. Welcome to Court with Krissy. My blood is still boiling after this one. The evil Mr. Rogers needs to remember the real Mr. Rogers' words of wisdom. Look for the helpers. And also listen to my words of wisdom. Look for some help. And to his new blushing bride, wow, congratulations, such a lucky lady. I hope you like it. Court with Krissy is now in session.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So now turning to the Terry Rogers case. Mr. Rogers, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. We are ready to proceed. I apologize for the delay, but as you have seen, if you've
Yes,
been
sir.
watching, we've
Can
been
I
busy.
say something real quick?
What?
I
I just-
thought we discussed this last time. I've been sitting here an hour and 45 minutes.
I know. I
already.
understand, Mr. Rogers. I know
Yeah.
you've been sitting there for an hour and 45 minutes. So have I.
Well, I thought we discussed this last time.
Well, there's emergencies that happen and I have to deal with them, Mr. Rogers. So we're going to go ahead with our hearing now.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I thought we
and we
discussed.
will continue with it
Last time.
until we're done. Okay, here's the rules that we operate under.
Okay.
We're
Why
quiet
did
until the
Why did you send me a letter saying 2:30?
because that's what time we thought we would start, and
Okay.
that doesn't necessarily. All right, Mr. Rogers, I went through this with you before. As you saw, if you were here, I had other things to do. I've sat here since 1:30 and working on cases, and now I'm going to hear yours, and we'll go as long as we take to do it. I'm done having the discussion about timing with you, period. So, Mr. Trush, Ms. Brooker, anything before we get started?
Yes, Your Honor, I do want to address, I know that we addressed this at the last hearing, but I strongly discourage this course of action. I still have not reviewed the video, although I have been notified that the body cam videos did arrive at my office at 2:42 this afternoon. I strongly discourage and strongly advise against proceeding in this manner without me having any ability to have reviewed any of that footage.
All right, I understand that. You'd basically be thinking, your advice to your client is that this matter be heard at a later date when you've had time to review those things so you can better advise him and better represent it. Is that a fair statement?
Correct. And I mean, he should be able to review them as well. I mean, it's
Right.
important
can let you
for
know.
me to see it. I think it's important for him to see it too.
Mr. Rogers, we can go ahead now, or you can have a chance to review those before the hearing. What do you want to do?
Let's go ahead.
Okay, we will. Ms. Brooker, your first witness.
Officer Waters.
All right, officer, if you'd raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, go ahead, counsel.
Officer, can you state your name for the record and spell your last name?
Colin Waters. Waters is spelled Watters.
What is your occupation and where are you employed?
I work for the Gaylord City Police.
And how long have you held that position?
A little over 4 years.
Okay. Were you on duty on September 3rd of this year?
Yes, I was.
And did you have occasion to have contact with Mr. Terry Rogers on that date?
Yes, I did.
And what led to you having contact with him?
I conducted a traffic stop on a vehicle that he was operating.
And why did you conduct a traffic stop on his vehicle?
I observed him traveling northbound on South Otsego, and he was dragging a large part of his vehicle underneath on the roadway.
Okay. And did you believe potentially there's some type of traffic violation occurring?
Yes.
Okay. And where did you stop him at?
It would have been South Otsego and 2nd Street, and he pulled into the old family video parking lot.
Okay. And were you in a marked patrol vehicle in your uniform at that time?
Yes, I was.
Was this location in the city of Gaylord?
Yes, it was.
And that's Otsego County?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall what time of day this was?
It was around 1:46, 1:47 in the afternoon.
Okay. And Mr. Rogers stopped at that location, is that correct?
Yes.
And what did you do next?
I advised him of the reason for the stop. I requested his driver's license from him. He refused to provide his ID and questioned the reasoning for the stop and requested a supervisor. I made contact with Sergeant Crane and requested that he respond to the stop. He came out to the stop and spoke with Mr. Rogers and continued to ask for identification. And Mr. Rogers continued to refuse to provide any sort of identification.
Okay. Did he give you any identification verbally?
No.
Okay. And he also would not provide any written identification like his license. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Did Sergeant Crane handle the balance of the traffic stop, or did you still assist with it?
Once he arrived on scene, I kind of stepped back and allowed Sergeant Crane to talk with Mr. Rogers.
Did you observe Sergeant Crane's interactions with him?
Yes.
Okay. Did Mr. Rogers eventually provide any identification?
No.
Okay. What did you eventually do then?
Eventually, he was asked to exit the vehicle, which he complied with, and he was placed under arrest for obstruction.
Okay. Did he get transported to the jail?
Yes, he did.
Did you eventually learn what his identity was?
Yes.
And how did you do that?
He had a driver's license on his person. I believe it was in a wallet, with it would have been his identification. Based on the actual driver's license itself, it was hard to tell if it was actually going to be him, just because of the differences in the pictures versus how he looked at the time of the stop. And then at the jail, he later advised his name was Terry Rogers.
Okay. How did you come into possession of his wallet?
After searching him after he was placed under arrest, I believe.
Okay. Okay. Did that essentially conclude your involvement with Mr. Rogers after you had him booked at the jail?
Yes.
Okay. I don't have any other questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trush.
Officer Waters, you indicated that you observed something underneath Mr. Rogers' vehicle?
Being drugged by Mr. Rogers' vehicle, yes.
Okay. Was there any damage to the body of Mr. Rogers' vehicle?
That I initially observed, no.
Okay. Did you observe some at a later point in time?
Yes, after Sergeant Crane arrived on the scene, there was some damage to the front of his vehicle as well.
Okay. And did that appear to be the cause of what was dragging behind the vehicle?
I guess it's hard to tell. The part that was dragging was sort of in the center underneath the vehicle. I guess I'm not sure if that would have been the cause.
Help me understand. Is something dragging under his vehicle, or is a piece of his vehicle dragging?
It's a piece of his vehicle that's dragging.
Okay. Did you ever ascertain how that occurred?
Yes. I guess it got brought up by Sergeant Crane when he was speaking with him.
When the vehicle passed by you, was it abnormally loud?
Yes.
When the vehicle passed by, were the lights functioning properly?
I'm not sure.
Well, let me ask. Well, when you pulled the vehicle over initially, what was the basis for the stop?
It was the part that was dragging underneath the vehicle. There was concern that it could come off, or if it was not, I guess if it wasn't part of the vehicle. I did find out later that it was part of the vehicle, but I was concerned that whatever he was dragging was going to come off and cause further damage to his vehicle or somebody else that was driving on the roadway, or causing damage to the roadway. I wasn't sure what kind of material it was at the time.
Okay, so when you stopped him, you weren't investigating a crime. You were acting in a public safety capacity.
Well, it would have fallen under, I believe, an insecure load.
Okay. So I just want to be clear. At the time you made the stop, were you making a stop for an unsecured load?
Yes.
And then did Mr. Rogers ever speak to you about the circumstances of how that occurred?
Not about how it occurred, but he did acknowledge that he was dragging something under his vehicle.
Did you ever come to any conclusion about how it occurred?
Not definitively, no.
Did you issue any sort of citation to Mr. Rogers?
Other than the obstruction charge, no.
And what happened to Mr. Rogers' vehicle at the scene?
It was towed.
You said Mr. Rogers refused to give you his identification. Do you remember exactly what he said to you when you asked for his identification?
He asked me why.
What did you understand that to mean? Why what?
Why, I guess he was asking why he was required to provide his identification.
Okay. What if anything did you identify or respond to him with?
I advised him that it was a traffic stop and he was required to provide identification on a traffic stop.
And the only basis for the obstruction was his failure to identify?
Yes.
I don't have any additional questions of this officer.
Ms. Brooker, anything else of Officer Waters?
Just to clarify, he didn't provide you with any type of identification, correct? Any name initially?
No.
Okay. I don't have any other questions.
Mr. Trush, anything else?
Very, very briefly. When you stopped the vehicle, had you run the plate?
Yes, I did.
Who was the registered owner of the vehicle, if you remember?
I believe it was a Donna Walsh.
No additional questions.
All right. Ms. Brooker? Also-
No other questions.
All right. Your next witness?
I'd call Sergeant Crane.
Sergeant, if you'd raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. You can go ahead, please. I think there was a yes, but I couldn't hear it.
Can you hear me now?
I can, yes. Go ahead.
Can you state your name for the record and spell your last name?
Sergeant Stephen Crane, C-R-A-N-E,
What is your occupation?
Detective Sergeant for the City of Gaylord Police Department.
And how long have you held that position?
22 years. Well, the detective position, I believe 2 years, but 22 years I've been here for the department.
Okay. Were you called out to a traffic stop on September 3rd of 2024?
Yes, I was.
And what was your understanding as to why you were being referred there?
Officer Waters had contacted me and said he was on a traffic stop and the driver of the vehicle was requesting a sergeant.
Okay. And did you arrive at that location?
I did. I arrived and made contact with Officer Waters. He indicated that he had stopped the vehicle, that a piece of the vehicle was dragging, and that he had requested the driver's license from the vehicle's driver, and he refused to give it to him.
Okay. Did you interact with the driver?
I did. I made contact. First of all, I walked around the front of the vehicle and I could see damage to the driver's side grill, and then down by where the tire is, I guess it'd be like the lower fairing. I looked underneath the vehicle and I could see it looks like the vehicle had struck something and it had ripped down the undercarriage of the vehicle, and that's what was contacting the ground. Upon doing that, I made contact with Mr. Rogers when he rolled the window down.
Okay. And can you see everyone on the, I don't know what kind of device you're using. Can you see everyone on your Zoom screen?
Yes.
Can you see the individual that you interacted with on that day on the Zoom screen?
I can. He's wearing looks like a plaid shirt and glasses.
Okay. Judge, could you let the record reflect that he's identified Mr. Rogers?
Any objections, Mr. Trush?
No objection.
So
Okay.
noted for the record.
Okay. Did you, just going back for a moment, did you have some concerns as to the fact that there was damage to the vehicle?
I did. I mean, looking at the plastic that was hanging down, a large piece, was starting to melt from being drug along the ground. I asked Mr. Rogers what happened, and then he indicated that he had hit something on our streets, referring to the streets in Gaylord. I asked did it just happen? He said, yes, it just happened. He said it was, I said, where? He said, I think he said just down the road, something to that effect, indicating that he had just been in some type of an accident, damaging his vehicle.
Okay. Did you attempt to gather any other information about that from him?
I did. He wouldn't advise where it happened. I asked him, basically, I said, well, you were involved in an accident and you need to provide your identification for that, as well as, because Officer Waters had requested it with a valid traffic stop. At that point, he basically refused to cooperate or provide his name or his license or anything.
Okay. And he did not, upon your request, he did not provide you verbally with his name or with his driver's license?
Correct. I advised him, I think multiple times, that he can be arrested if he's going to refuse to provide that. We need to complete an accident report, and also for the traffic stop. And he basically, actually, I think he actually told me, well, then you're going to have to arrest me.
Okay. How do you recall, like, how long you interacted with Mr. Rogers?
I would say at least 5 minutes or so.
Okay. And then what happened after that, after he indicated that you'd have to arrest him?
I asked him to exit the vehicle. Again, I advised him multiple times, you just need to provide your license so we can verify who you are for the accident report. And he again refused, and at that point he was placed under arrest.
Nope.
Okay. Did you assist Officer Waters with that portion, or did Officer Waters complete bringing him to the jail on his own?
Officer Waters placed him in handcuffs. Him and I both verified the tightness of the handcuffs, that they were not too tight, and then Officer Waters walked him back to his patrol car. At that point, I did go, I believe I'm the one who found his wallet on the inside the vehicle there. I did an inventory search of the vehicle for anything that was to document anything of high value prior to the impound. In his wallet, I did find an ID, but the ID was from, I believe, was issued in 2021. And I think Mr. Rogers had lost quite a bit of weight, or at least the picture in the ID. When I held it up to him and asked if that was him, he wouldn't answer. He said he was, I think he said he's going to plead the fifth. And I couldn't tell if that was him in the photo.
And did you do that prior to him being brought to the jail, as far as holding the ID up and talking to him about it?
I did.
Okay. While you were still at the scene, did he give any information about his name?
No, he would not give any information as to who he was.
Okay. And then what ended up happening with the vehicle after he was brought to jail?
So when I completed the inventory search, I noticed that there was a dash camera in the vehicle. It appeared to be functioning and operating. A search warrant was subsequently drafted, and the SD card was seized from the dash cam. We reviewed the SD card, but the video had been full or was not recording. I had done that to try and determine where the accident had happened. That was later returned to Mr. Rogers along with copies of the search warrant. The vehicle was impounded. It was on private property there. The old family video, I'm not sure who owns that, but
My friend.
it was impounded from the scene there.
Okay. Did that conclude your involvement on this case?
I did have some contact with Mr. Rogers when he came in to FOIA some of the documents in the video at our office.
Okay. All right. I don't have any other questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Trush.
You identified that when you saw the vehicle that you observed there to be damage on the vehicle?
Correct.
Was there any accidents that have been reported that day?
I don't know. I wasn't listening to the radio the entire day. There was not an accident reported involving that vehicle that I know of.
Was there any indicators that you would have seen from the vehicle to tell you where an accident may have occurred?
No, just the damage.
Any paint transfer?
I don't believe so. I'd have to look at the pictures. I didn't see any pay transfer from another vehicle. Based on the damage, it didn't look like it had hit a vehicle, but probably a curb or some type of a fixed object.
Okay. You indicated that you asked Mr. Rogers for his identification.
Yes. All right. I'd have to watch the video, but I know I asked him for at least his driver's license, or that he had told him that he had to identify who he was, or he would be arrested.
When you asked him for his ID, how did he respond?
He said why, and I continued to explain to him why, and he continued to argue that he wasn't required to give me his identification.
So what did you explain to him as to why?
I explained to him that he had just told me he was involved in an accident. Based on the damage I saw in the vehicle, it was over $1,000, which requires us to do a UD10. He had failed to report the accident, which he said he would report later. The accident, you need to report an accident as soon as reasonably possible, and I was standing right there for him to report it, and he refused to report the accident. And then I explained to him that he had a valid traffic stop for fail to secure load, where a piece of his vehicle could fly off and strike a pedestrian or cause further damage. And then that was another reason why he was required to provide his identification.
So you said he indicated an accident happened. Where did he tell you it happened?
On your city streets, I think is what he told me.
Okay. And your understanding was when you arrived on the scene that this was an unsecured load?
Yes, it appeared to be a piece of the vehicle that could fly off.
I don't have any additional questions for this officer.
Ms. Brooker?
Just quickly, Officer Crane, in your 22 years of experience, is it typical at times for a traffic stop, you're investigating one specific possible infraction, and it turns out you discover of a different one that's occurred?
Yeah, I mean, I probably handle an actual incident just like this, where I stopped a vehicle for a piece of the vehicle hanging off, a defective tail light or turn signal or something that's not working, to discover that they had been in some type of an accident.
Okay. I don't have any other questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Mr. Trush, anything further?
What time of day did the stop occur?
Afternoon, sometime 2 o'clock-ish, I believe.
No additional questions.
And Ms. Brooker, anything else?
No, Your Honor.
All right, any further witnesses?
No, Judge.
Mr. Trush, any proofs? I'm sorry, did you say no, Mr. Trush? I said,
No, Your Honor.
okay. All right, Ms. Brooker, argument?
Your Honor, Mr. Rogers is charged with obstruction of justice. And it's a common law offense, involves interference with the orderly administration of justice. The court has heard testimony from both officers that Officer Waters initially stopped him for what he believed was a traffic offense. Mr. Rogers refused to identify himself. We had Sergeant Crane come to the scene. Mr. Rogers continued to refuse to identify himself. And in addition, they learned that perhaps an accident had occurred and they were attempting to investigate that as well. So that is, I believe that meets the criteria for obstruction of justice. It doesn't fit failing to identify. There is a specific misdemeanor about failing to present ID or false ID, because Mr. Rogers didn't present any ID. He didn't give a fictitious name or anything like that. He just would not identify himself. So obstruction of justice is the correct charge for this, and we are just asking the court to bind him over.
All right, thank you. Mr. Trush?
Thank you, Your Honor. It's well established that Michigan is not a stop and identify state. There has to be a identified reasonable suspicion or probable cause to detain and force someone to identify themselves. There has to be a reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. That's most recently been affirmed in People v. Prude. That's a 2024 case. We don't have that here. They stopped him because they said something was hanging from his vehicle. They're alleging that it's an unsecured load, but it seems pretty clear it's just a piece of the vehicle. That's not probable cause for a stop, and this should be that, well, there isn't probable cause for the obstruction of justice here. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Brooker, anything else?
No, Judge.
All right, the charge is obstruction of justice in violation of MCL 750.505. The probable cause argument for Mr. Trush, while I understand, I think it was reasonable, excuse me, for the officer to conclude after viewing what was dangling or hanging from the underside of the vehicle, that it would be could be dangerous to either his vehicle or another vehicle if it fell off. And it would be at least potentially an unsecured load. It was a reasonable assumption by the officer that it was. And so the court does find that Mr. Rogers' actions following that were a violation of law and were in fact an obstruction of the justice. And I only find that obviously by a preponderance, or excuse me, by a probable cause standard. I'm not making a finding of guilt or innocence, of course, at this point. Simply that the matter should be bound over to the circuit court to stand trial. Counsel, anything else that we can do on this?
No, Judge.
No, Your Honor.
All right. Okay. Mr. Rogers, your next notice will come from circuit court. Mr. Trush, do you waive reading of the complaint for circuit court purposes?
Yes, Your Honor. By way of circuit court arraignment, we would waive a reading of the complaint and continue to plead not guilty.
All right. The court will continue bond absent objection. Mr. Rogers, stay in touch with your attorney. This will be your last hearing that you have in front of me. Your next hearing will be in front of a circuit court judge. This
Okay.
matter is bound.
I'd like to leave the state. Is that possible? I'd like to go on my honeymoon.
Your honeymoon, where are you going?
I'm not for sure.
Okay. Well, when are you going?
As soon as you'll let me go out of state.
How long are you going to be gone for?
Oh, probably till April.
Till April. That I think is too much. You're going to have to take it up with the circuit court judge. That's a pretty long honeymoon. If you're going for 3 or 4 days or a week, that'd be something different, but I can't authorize that. Sorry. Now, you can bring it up with a circuit court judge. Lots of people go to Florida for the winter or something like that. And I probably wouldn't have a problem with that if I knew where you were going, if I got an address on that. But if you don't know, I think you better wait and bring it up with a circuit court judge. You'd probably be having a hearing in front of them.
Well, give
Mr.
me
Trush,
his
when would you? What?
Give
What'd you
me
say?
his number.
I'm sorry, say it again.
Let me have his number.
Well, that's not quite how it works. You'll get a hearing notice and the argument can be presented then. Mr. Trush, do you have an idea as to when it might next be heard in circuit court?
I don't. I would indicate notices I received today were beginning of December. So.
All right. It will probably be in December, but Mr. Trush doesn't have control over that, nor do I.
Well, I'm going to need a number then. I need to call somebody. I'm not going to hold off my honeymoon till December.
Well, sir, I'm willing to rule on that if you're willing to tell me where you were going and how long you'd be gone, but you're not willing to tell me where you're going. You're saying you're going to be gone till April. That doesn't work.
I would go to Kentucky, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, New Mexico. How's that?
But until April?
Well,
Yeah, I think you better bring that up with the circuit court judge, not me.
well, I'm bringing it up with you.
Okay, well, I've already bound it over. Ms.
Can I
Brooker,
leave
you're
this?
going,
Can I leave the state?
Mr. Rogers,
Can I
I've ruled
leave
all
the
I can.
state, sir? Can I leave
Okay.
the state?
You cannot.
leave
The
the
order is,
state? Can I leave
don't leave the state without the court's permission. You do not have my permission. You can try circuit court, but we're done right now.
How do I get hold
This
of
matter is adjourned.
the court? How do I get hold of the
Court is
circuit
concluded.
court? And those officers are liars.
Okay, you better turn her off.
Wait